Good afternoon. Welcome to Total Running Club. This is a Project Fit Ask Coach session with myself, Jeff. We're going to start in about 1 minute. Let's see how many we get on today. Anyone is welcome. We're going to be covering a range of questions. Quite a few people have emailed in their questions. A few have posted on Facebook, and you're very welcome to interact in the session today, to comment and discuss. We'll see how that goes. Last week we had a lot of questions. I wasn't quite able to cover them all, so I'm going to be a little bit more efficient on that this week. Some of the topics that people have been asking about. Some questions to do with racing, some questions to do with training, and shoes. Those are the three topics so far. So can everyone hear me okay that's online? There's just a few people at the moment, but can you maybe just type me a comment just so that I know the feed is working okay? And then we'll get into it. If someone could just help me to do that, that would be great. Okay. Hi, Tan. How are you? Can you hear me okay? Is everything clear? Okay, super. Okay, then let's get into it. So, Tan, you had sent me a question in advance, which I printed off here. I think we talked about it a little bit last week, but let's get into it in more detail. So the question from Tan, which is more important to improve, stride length or cadence? So that's a great question. It's a question I get asked a lot. I just repeat that. Which is more important to improve, stride length or cadence? So not an easy question. I think both are important, and the nature of running is that really those are the only two variables. Of course, fitness plays a part in that, but there's only two ways we can get quicker, and that is to move our legs quicker or to lengthen our stride. And ideally, we do both. But it takes a long time to work on both of those, and I would always suggest to focus on cadence rather than stride length. So just getting your leg turnover a little bit quicker is probably an easier one to get results from. You shouldn't really be messing about too much with your stride length. An increased stride length will come as you get stronger, as you get more mobile, and as you get fitter. It's not really something you can force. Cadence is affected by fitness and also by mobility, and particularly on the hips. So for both cadence and hips, work on your hip strength. So lunges, squats, hip circles, that all helps. Hopefully that answers your question. Okay, please type in your questions, then I can share them on the screen. People can see that more easily, and then we'll get into it. If anyone has any follow-up questions on what I'm saying, type it in and I'll be able to see that and share that as well. Just give you a moment, then I've got some other questions that people have pre-sent. Okay, here's a question from Ashraf. Hi Ashraf, how are you doing? How to improve running if you can only spare 3 days a week? Okay, I can see on your photo you're on a bicycle. Does that mean that you're one of these crazy triathletes? Anyway, it doesn't matter. Okay, 3 days a week. 3 days a week is fine. Many of us are training on that basis, 2 weekdays and weekend. The important thing is not to cram everything into too short a space of time. So it's not ideal if you were just running Saturday, Sunday, and then nothing else. But 2 weekdays and a weekend can work quite well. So you space that out. And typically, if you want to improve, you're going to need to do a speed session as one of those 3 sessions. So that could be anything, could be fartlek, could be hills, could be intervals, tempo run. So some kind of quality session. And then you're going to have one easier session, so just nice, easy jogging. And then you're probably going to do a longer run at the weekend. Depends what you're training for. The challenge with 3 days a week is that it's hard to keep sort of mixing that, and you do need to keep mixing that. So you would need to progress those 3 days and increase or continually increase the intensity and the duration. But yeah, 3 days a week is perfectly achievable to see improvements. Ideally, on top of that, a little bit of strength work as well. Okay, hope that answers that question. Okay, Patrick, good to see you again. Patrick's asking opinion on food supplements like the occasional protein shake. Yeah, I'm a firm believer in recovery product. I think it really works. It's something I use actually every day. I use a strong dose after a hard session, and I use a weaker dose after an easy session. It helps me a lot. I'm an old uncle, so I definitely need it. Patrick, you're probably older than me, I think. So yeah, you want to be taking some protein supplement. I'm very loyal to Hammer. I think the Hammer Recoverite is an excellent product. I can certainly recommend that. Okay, let's move on to Jörg. Nice to see you. I can't see your whole question. I might have to hide that in a second. Any tips on training based on heart zone? How to plan your daily runs? Okay, quite a lot in that topic. I'm not going to talk about heart zones. We talked about that last week in quite some detail, and you can watch that back. It's on Facebook. It's on YouTube. Yeah, planning runs. That's a really good question and good topic to talk about. I'm just going to hide it so I can read your full question. Oh no, that is your full question. Okay. So how to plan your training. A lot to cover, but the basics, I suppose, would be ensuring that you balance it out. So no back-to-back hard stuff. You want to be doing hard, then easy, hard, then easy. Make sure you're not overloading your body. It takes experience. It takes a lot of learning about how your body can recover to know what you can take and what you cannot. The key is to push as hard as you can without getting sick or without getting injured. So you need to find your own limits with that. You're always looking to increase in terms of, there's various variables you can play with, which would be duration, would be recovery, would be speed. Those are your main variables with a workout. So you need to mix things up. You need to plan that progression, normally working in cycles. We also talked a little bit about that last week. So yeah, that probably covers that briefly. But there's a lot in there. A training plan takes time, takes planning, takes structure, takes experience, takes a lot of trial and error. Okay. If doing basic lunges, squats, basic body weight is enough to build up the core, yes and no. A lot of those movements still utilize the core, but I'd certainly recommend focusing on some core specific exercises. So it's great you've signed up to Project Fit. Project Fit, we have a workout every week, and we will be using core a lot. So yeah, you definitely want to include that. You don't need to do too long on the core, but a little bit helps. Anytime you run, you're also working out your core, even though you don't really know it, as long as your posture is right. Bong, welcome back. Will we subject ourselves to injury if we run every day, 7 days a week? Not necessarily. I don't recommend it. I recommend 1 day off. I think it's very important to take 1 day rest. You can run more than 7 times a week by using doubles, but try and take 1 day off. That's my advice. Worst case, maybe a day off in 10 days if you're really used to that intensity. But you have to measure the impact of every run, and you have to know what is the point of every run. So sometimes we get a little bit caught up in the chasing mileage. We get a bit obsessed with it. So sometimes a rest day will give you more benefit than an additional 1 hour of running. I think that's very important to stress. So you need to listen to your body. Never plan too far in advance. And if on a day you don't feel like running, or you're just aching all over, it's probably an indicator you'd be better taking a day's rest. For me, that works well. I run 9 to 10 times per week, but I always have a day off. But on a morning when I'm planning to run, if I don't feel like running, then normally that's my indication. Okay, I'm going to skip that run. Okay, let me come back to a couple more of my email questions. I can't remember who wrote this one. Sorry, it was from last week. I didn't get around to answering it. I used to be able to reach above 170 beats per minute for hill training, which is my tempo heart rate. But as I get fitter, I find that my heart rate tends to stay at zone 1 and zone 2, and I can hardly reach my tempo zone. What is your advice? I suspect your heart rate measurements and zones are not right. If you're unable to get into your tempo run zone by a heart rate, you're the fittest guy in the world. So you need to remeasure those rates, I think. But don't get hung up on specific beats per minute rate. Use your exertion, use your rate of perceived exertion, RPE. So just push it harder until you feel that you're out of breath. So a tempo zone should be comfortably hard. So you shouldn't really be able to maintain a conversation, but you should be able to maintain that pace for at least 30 minutes, depending on your experience and fitness level. So yeah, something's not right with those zones, I would say. But I'm happy for you to contact me. We can discuss that specifically. Fun question, Patrick. I'll be the judge of that. Let's see. How many seasons are there in Scotland? We've got 4 seasons in Scotland. Same as Germany, I think. Oh, you're making a joke. June and winter. You're lucky if you get a good June. Okay, here's a nice question. Any experience tips on barefoot or minimalist shoe running? Yes. Be very careful. Barefoot running, not something I do. Minimalist shoe, I've tried a few times. I guess it depends on what your objective is, why you want to do it. I see some really hardcore barefoot runners out there, and I take my hat off to them. There is a risk with it, of course. You're putting more pressure on your body, but it's a much more natural experience, and generally I think that's why people like to do that. But if you're going to change, if you're going to experiment with that, just do it cautiously, do it steadily. So don't suddenly run a 20K long run in a pair of minimalist shoes. You are definitely risking injury. I think some people's bodies can take it much better than others. I've definitely had an experience where I got shin splints as a result of wearing a shoe that wasn't right for me. Maybe now I'm a bit stronger, I'd be able to take it more, but for me, it's not something I want to do. I would run barefoot maybe on grass as part of a cool down on the beach. I mean, barefoot reminds you of the good mechanics of running, but to do it on the roads, nah, I'm not going to do that. But just be careful if you want to experiment with that. Okay. Question about cross-training. Yeah, this is a good question. If I could have another extra couple of days in the week, I would do more cross-training. Swimming, I would do more of, and the elliptical machine, I really like. It's normally one I go on when I get injured, which thankfully hasn't been for a long time now. But I like the elliptical machine. I think it's an excellent tool. Some walking, some hiking, I think is a great thing to do as cross training. But me personally, I don't do too much, I must admit, only if I have an issue which requires me to sort of compensate a bit. Okay, a couple of questions coming in about different specific training methods, MAF, also Hanson. I don't want to get into talking about other coaches' principles. It's not for me to do, and I wouldn't do them justice if I was going to argue for or against. So I have seen those questions, but I will pass on those. Thanks for asking those. Okay, someone was asking me, I'm slightly overweight on body mass index. All my friends discourage me from running. They say it will injure my knees and that I should be walking instead. Is this true? Difficult one to answer that. Of course, the more weight you're carrying, the harder it is. Some of you will know, 3 years ago now, I did the Gobi desert race, which was amazing, and I was carrying 10 to 12 kgs on my back, and it massively changed the way I was able to run. So when I see someone, or where I work with someone who's carrying an extra number of kgs, let's call it 10 for sake of argument, I can relate very clearly to how different it would be if you were to lose those 10 kgs. It makes a huge difference. So yes, carrying extra weight puts extra pressure on the body, but it depends how used you are to that and what is your physiology. But I would never discourage anyone from running because they're overweight, definitely not. But of course, the quicker the weight is lost, if that's the objective, then the better. It's going to make the running easier, and of course, the fitter you get, the lighter you are, the faster you will be in general. Some people will have knee problems because of carrying that weight. Some will not. Some of us will have knee problems where we're not carrying any weight. So it's hard to generalize on that. But if you are experiencing knee pain, then it's important to figure out what's causing that. I'm not sure there's much difference between walking and sort of slow running in terms of the pressure it puts. But if your body will tell you if you can walk without pain, but running causes you pain, then maybe that's an indication. So you just need to manage that yourself, I think. And there was a follow-up question about that, saying on hills you find your knee pain is different to running on flat. So it's good to experiment with stuff like that and try and help you figure out maybe what's causing the pain. One thing to be aware of just is the camber on the road. So often we're just slightly running at an angle if we're running in the curb rather than in the middle of the road. And that can actually play quite a big part in imbalances in our body and can lead to injury. So just be aware of that when you're running. Try and run on a flat piece of the road wherever possible. Okay. So Tan, you're asking, walking and trail is considered cross-training? Yeah, in my view, very much so. I mean, anything which uses slightly different muscle groups is effectively cross-training. Trail walking or hiking and trail running, definitely a very good supplement to running. It uses different muscle groups, much different running pattern to road running. Okay, this is Sofian. Hi, Sofian. Nobody's supposed to know yet, but yes, I finally bought a pair of Kipchoge shoes. I haven't bought a pair of shoes in 4 years. I've been lucky. I've been sponsored and received shoes all those times. So I decided to treat myself, having tried the shoes, which were kindly lent to me by a friend, and I do love them. So yeah, I invested in a pair of those shoes. What I will say with them is you have to be quite careful. Unless you're running on your toes, don't waste your money. You've got to be running light on your feet. Another thing I wouldn't recommend is doing a long run on them. Someone told me that somebody did that. Was it you, Sofian? Can't remember. So save those shoes for your racing, save them for your fast running. Do they make you faster? Yeah, I think so, but it's whether you can sustain that. So with all of our running, it's easy when we're on fresh legs, but as we fatigue, does our form change and are we able to benefit? So all of these carbon plate shoes really require you to be running pretty efficiently. And as soon as you stop doing that, you're probably not benefiting from the shoe. So actually, it's my opinion that probably only 20% of runners can get the real benefit of these fancy shoes. Anyway, we'll keep you posted. I'm planning to do a 5 km time trial soon on them. And if I don't get a fast time, I'll be contacting Nike for a refund. Okay. Question from Ashraf. Can you share how we approach when running uphill? Yeah, definitely. So I live in Bukit Tungku. I do all my running, or most of my running in Bukit Tungku. You see a lot of runners at the weekend and a lot of cyclists. And anytime there's a hill, it's quite interesting to see how people cope with that. So I see a lot of people walking. I see a lot of people with their head drooping, shuffling, looking like it's very, very hard work. So you have to not be afraid of hills, first of all. I think hills are something you should embrace. And the easiest way to do that is to maintain your cadence. So keep your feet moving quickly, even if you're taking tiny steps. It's better to do that and have a nice steady cadence than to slow your cadence right down and try and have a longer stride. So definitely always advise on that. The head position, very, very important. Keep your head looking sort of 7 to 10 meters ahead of you. So don't look down at the ground, because as soon as you do that, your core collapses and you lose the benefits of your posture. And once your head goes down, mentally, the hill has beaten you. The other thing I think very important is to use your arms. So increase your arm swing on an uphill. Downhill, completely different technique. We can talk about that separately, but uphill, maintain cadence, shorten stride, head looking ahead, and increased arm swing. Comment from my wife, Sue. Yeah, it was Sofian that took his expensive Nike shoes on a long run. Okay, so let's talk about downhill running. So Tan, you're getting a lot of value from today's session here. I always seem to slow down when I run downhill. That does happen. There's kind of a natural instinct to brake, to lean back, to use our heels, and to fight gravity. So there's quite a specific technique for running downhill, and it requires you to lean forward, requires you to almost sort of let yourself go and fall. But if you get it right, you can really move quickly down a hill. You're also going to use your arms a little bit more wildly than you would ever do in running. And it's the only time that we would encourage people to let the arms go a bit. So you use your arms for balance, almost kind of swinging them to help you push forward. You can have a pretty long stride on the downhill, but you still need your foot to be coming under the hip. But the key technique element is leaning forward, and it's quite a significant forward lean. You might feel quite uncomfortable when you try that, but once you get it, you'll be flying. Okay, I think I'm keeping on top of the comments this week. I'll go back to a couple of the pre-prepared questions. Let's see. Yeah, someone asking me about shoe lifespan. So how often should I change my shoes? Again, it's hard to generalize on that, but most shoes have a shelf life of sort of 600 to 800 kilometers. So it's quite important to track which mileage you're doing on each shoe that you may have. But some shoes will last longer, some will not last as long as that. It also depends how you run, how it wears the shoe. But it's pretty important to keep your shoes fresh and not to overuse them. I get many people coming to me, I've got a sore knee, and I can just take a look at the shoe and see that it's probably 5 years old, and there'll be no support left on that shoe at all. So be sensible, but obviously it's expensive to keep buying shoes, but you just have to use your judgment on how it's wearing out, same as with a car tire or a bike tire. Talking about shoes, I see many people with very, very loose laces. I don't know why that is here, but it seems to be a common trend. You've got to tie your laces tightly. It helps your foot fit the shoe very snugly. It prevents any movement in the shoe. So tie it from the bottom, from the toe, pull up each of the tabs, and then tighten at the top. I know it sounds obvious, but very, very important. And I see a lot of people not doing that. How many shoes do I rotate? I've got over 20 pairs that I use regularly. That is excessive, only because I get them free, apart from the one I just bought. I think it's a good idea to have minimum of 2 different shoe types, probably a few more if you can afford that. But definitely you want a faster shoe for your speed workouts, and you want a bit more cushion for your longer runs. That would normally be a nice balance to have. Yeah, find the brands that work for you, and probably stick with those. But you don't want to be doing a quality session on a very heavy shoe, a chunky shoe. You're not going to run as nicely on that. And you don't really want to be using a super lightweight shoe for a long, easy run, for example. So you definitely need 2 different types of shoe if possible. But if you're just going to have one shoe, then go for something that's in the middle. So not too heavy, not too light. But be sure to accurately measure how much mileage you're doing on that. Okay. I think most of the questions I have answered. We've got another 5 or 10 minutes. So if anyone wants to type any last questions, please go ahead. Otherwise, we can wrap things up shortly. Let me just see if I missed anything today. So just while anyone types in any last questions, coming back to cross training, which I think is a a nice topic to talk about. If I was more motivated and less lazy and had a bit more time, then I would love to do more yoga, more mobility-based sort of gym work. I absolutely suck at yoga, so it's not something I'm disciplined at forcing myself to do. But with total running, we're doing a lot more corporate classes with yoga, and I'm seeing how popular those are. And it's reminding me that I should do a bit more of that. So having a flexible body makes a big difference in your running. So yeah, it might be a good idea to do a bit more cross training rather than just pure running. Okay, last question from you, Tan. And this is a good question. How long is the long run? How long is a piece of string? So for some people, a long run might be 12 kilometers. For other people, it might be 36 kilometers. Depends on what you're training for. Depends on your fitness level, your experience, your ability. So I think it's important to define what is the purpose of a long run, or what is a long run. So generally speaking, we refer to it here in Malaysia as LSD, long, slow distance. But you want to be careful. You don't want to be going too slow, and that it affects your running stride, your mechanics. You still want to be running normally, but you don't want to be running too fast that it's taking too much out of you, depleting your body too much. So for me, I consider a long run sort of anything over 90 minutes. So I'd be looking, 20K plus. And I would never do the same type of long run. I think that's a mistake a lot of people make. Every weekend doing exactly the same route, maybe a 15K or an 18K or a 20K long run. Vary it. So put some speed into the middle of a long run, put some speed into the end of a long run, vary the distance of your long run. Some weekends don't do a long run. I like to do a longer run once a fortnight only, but I only do that if I'm training for either a half marathon or a full marathon. Otherwise, I'd rather put a bit more speed into my training. So yeah, I think that's a really good point. And it's great that people do long runs in groups, but I think you could mix it up. You could get more out of your long run by playing around with the speed. Okay, a couple of last questions. How long should we rest before doing recovery after 4.5 miles? How long should we rest before? I don't quite get that question. I think it's asking how long should we recover after a full or a half before training again, if that is the question. Good question. A full marathon is taxing. It takes a lot out of us. Very often we think, we feel fine after a few days, but definitely the impact of a full marathon sits in your body for 3 to 4 weeks. So you can obviously start training again relatively quickly after doing it, but you need to be very mindful that your resources have been depleted, and it's probably more effective to back off for a few weeks and let your body recover. Half marathon is less taxing, but it depends on the conditions, depends how hard you've pushed it. So I suppose a half would take at least a week's recovery, possibly 2 weeks recovery, but you probably feel pretty comfortable. You might not even have any aches or pains, but listen to your body with all these things, but don't underestimate the need for recovery. And if you're doing like back-to-back full marathon, something like that, it's not really advisable. You might get away with it and you might feel it was no problem, but it's those kind of backing up that leads to injuries when we least expect it. So even though you feel fine, the fatigue will be there, and then you do have to be very, very, very careful. But experience plays a big part in that, and everyone is different. Some people can bash out a marathon every week and cope with that, but that's probably quite unusual. So don't copy your friends, work out what's right for you. Okay, I think let's leave it like that today. There's some really good questions in there. Thanks very much. So every Wednesday we're doing this. Next week we've got nutrition. We've got Adele Wong. She's our dietitian that's working with us. Adele from Nutrition Track. So I can't wait for that one. We've already got loads of good questions waiting for Adele. So we're going to be speaking about what to eat before runs, during run, after run, weight loss, all those kind of things. So Adele will answer those. She's the expert. I hope you're following Project Fit. I hope you're doing your speed workout. It's just one session once a week. This week, I think there's a fartlek, nice session. I hope you're doing your strength workout. It's a 20-minute video. And the weekly challenge is designed to work a different part of the body. So those are the 3 things to do with Project Fit. Please tell your friends about it. It's free. Get everyone involved and help us grow that. And then I will see you in 2 weeks for the next Q&A, but I'll also be helping Adele next week. Okay, thanks very much. We'll see you next time.